This channel is for educational purposes only. Please do your own due diligence before making any investment decisions. Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Invest Like a Pro. What I'd like to do today is actually focus a little bit more on the sell side today. I typically go through a lot of information on entry points and all the different strategies using multiple time frames. But what I want to do today is I'm going to briefly go into what the entry would be on a specific setup, and then I want to go through a little bit more detail on the exit strategy if you're looking to go through and look at price and momentum to exit a trade. There are a lot of times where I would recommend being a little bit more consistent. I talk about that in my trading course. And by the way, I get enough questions about this. So the trading course, I put it in the description below, can be found at rabilstockresearch.com/services. It goes into a lot of detail in a very organized way, with all these concepts that I do on this channel. So, and if you haven't bought the book, I would definitely recommend starting with that. Okay, let's go ahead and get into this example. So I've got Nucor up here, one of the steel stocks, and it made a really nice move to the upside, and we had nice confirmation moving up. And then it went through this kind of correction phase and then tried to go to a new high here. Now, as many of you know, this is a little tricky here because you could argue that this was kind of working its way back down to zero. So is this really divergence with that? And I'm not really overly focused on that. I would say I like to look at the last two peaks, right? So this peak and that peak, that's definitely a lower high, and this is a higher high. So that's usually the way I'll go about looking at divergence. But if we get a full-fledged correction back to the zero line, I want to start over. Okay, so what interests me about this is the fact that the ADX was so weak after being really strong, right? We get a strong rally and we get confirmation here, and then we go through this and we try and push higher, and this kind of fails miserably in a way. So we could argue again, you can argue whether the merits of this trade are good or not. I don't really want to get into that as much as the exit strategy. So if we looked at this developing on the daily chart, the hourly chart is showing a pretty good reversal pattern. And we know we have a reversal when the 18 crosses down through the 40. We go into the zone and then we come out and we show strength. And look at this reversal bar. Look at the crossover of the zero line and then a pinch play. All right. Now, because this was kind of strong going up, it's not going to show up on this time frame. So again, I don't want to go into the merits of whether this is a good trade or not. What I want to do is say, let's say you're in a trade that you put on and you're trying to decide how to go about exiting, and not necessarily using the approach that I use in the course, which is a lot of it is based on the stock's own volatility and taking advantage of that. And I do recommend that. But in certain cases, when you're looking to trade shorter term, you're looking for a high probability point of where the move is over. All right. Now, if you notice what happens here, we get a big red bar. Now, I would view this more as the start of the move. All right, this is a part of the course as well. This bar to me is an igniting bar. That's where you're starting a move to the downside, not ending one. All right, because you're coming out of this consolidation zone. So we get that move going to the downside. So I don't know that the next bar I'm necessarily looking to exit on this gap down, which would have been right here. The other thing that I would recommend is look at the smaller time frames of momentum. You see how red DI and MACD both confirmed this low. So as I'm watching this, am I taking partial profits when I get a big bar? Definitely. Or if I get a little gap down, you want to take some partial profits. I'm talking about exiting the trade because you think the down move is over. True swing trading is getting in and getting out when you think that that the momentum is ending and or the trend is starting to shift back to the upside. And when I look at this pattern, I can see that we have pretty strong gap down, and I'm always going to want to take partial profits on gap downs, but we have continuation here. Now we go through a pause phase and then move to the downside again. Another nice gap down that follows this, basically this pause, but this is basically a new sell signal on the hourly chart. And where we rally up to the 18 and fail, these lines are essentially parallel. Now, as you notice, as this moves down now, we don't get a new high in red DI. So what I'm starting to do at this point is once I see this gap down, you get another gap down. Yeah. Do you want to take some partial profits again? If you want to do that, no problem. But I would just start trailing a stop above the highs of these bars. And if you know, and one thing you might not want to do is when the bars get really small, don't use them. Okay. Even these inside bars you could kind of question, but you definitely want to use this. You could potentially use that. It's not too small. But then after that, I would stop. I wouldn't keep lowering it. Those bars are just too tiny at that point. So, but if you notice what happens now, now we know we've come down and we gap down again. Now look at what happens this time. We get MACD confirmation, but the DI does not confirm yet again. Now I'm going to lower this down to here for sure at a minimum, but I'm getting a gap down after a big red bar. Remember, you want to add this as a part of the bar. That's a huge bar. This to me is more of so this is an igniting bar. This to me looks more like an exhaustion bar. And I'm not necessarily going to cover or get out on the exhaustion bar, but then that bar or the following bar where we get a gap down. Now we're coming back and filling the gap in on this area where it bottomed before. This is a very high probability turning point in price from a short-term standpoint. It doesn't mean that this can't go down again after a rally, but from a short-term standpoint, we're really stretched away from the moving average. We weren't here. Do you see how this big bar is really touching the 18? That's when I know I've got more of an igniting bar. Whereas this bar gaps down and it's really stretched away. It wasn't anywhere near touching that line. Now I know I'm getting a little bit late and I'm looking for an exit. Now again, I'm going to use the two of these together. But the moment I see this gap down and I see another DI divergence, I don't think you have to wait to get taken out here. I think you can just get out at 140, just call it a day and say, you know what, this is a great trade. Now, when you look at this whole setup, you have to realize that yes, I'm taking certain liberties when I'm bringing this up, but I was looking for a pattern on the sell side, meaning to cover a trade, a short trade, and I wanted to make sure you guys understand how to go about being aggressive. There's a time to give these room where you want to give them plenty of room. And then there's a time when something is accelerating to the downside and getting really stretched away. And again, if you're more oriented towards trading, then I always believe in taking targets rather than trailing a stop. All right. So I might take a target here. I might take another target here. I might probably wouldn't have taken this one. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. The reason why I wouldn't necessarily have taken this is because we just went through a consolidation pattern. We had our little ABC and then we had continuation to the downside. So I'm probably not like in a huge hurry, especially after this bar finishes. And I know I can put a stop above based on what the red DI is doing. So at that point, I can trail a stop. And then I'm looking to take a target as much as possible in this strategy. If I'm trading, I'm looking to take targets. All right. So hopefully this helps you in certain situations where you might be wanting to continue to trail. I know that a lot of you might do this because I know I did this for a long time where I would have a trade and I would feel like I was a genius and that this was, turning into just a huge win, and it was just going to keep going on forever. And what I realized is you need to really take profits when you get massive moves in your favor in a short period of time. You have to take advantage of that. And so I'm giving you ways to think about that. And that is when you get gap downs in your favor on short-term trades, you want to do something. In this case, because we're getting divergence on the smaller time frame DI, I would actually consider exiting the trade, especially because of how far it had gone and the fact that we were coming into the next support zone. All right, go ahead and let me know if you have any questions or comments. Thanks.